Hello, Gene Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog. Yesterday I spoke about the warming relations between Arab countries, especially Saudi Arabia and Israel, and the frustration of these Arab countries, especially Saudi Arabia, with the Palestinians and their refusal to recognize reality. I talked about those countries yesterday. I promised to focus on the Palestinians today, so that's what I'm going to do. But first, I just want to briefly revisit another subject that I talked about yesterday at the very beginning, which is about the growing support among black voters for Donald Trump. I just want to share a new article. Why do younger black voters like Trump more than elders? UCLA study explains. UCLA, that's University of California at Los Angeles, UCLA data collected just prior to the protests about the death of African-American George Floyd show younger black Americans have been holding more favorable views of President Trump than their parents and grandparents. The data collected from April 2nd to May 13th, so we'll have to see if these recent riots have had any influence on what this article or this study showed. The data collected from April 2nd to May 13th by the Democracy Fund plus UCLA Nationscape Project, an initiative that conducted weekly surveys of thousands of potential voters for nearly a year, found that 29% of black voters ages 30 to 44 and 21% ages 18 to 29 have a, quote, very favorable, unquote, or, quote, somewhat favorable, unquote, view of President Trump. This compares to just 14% of black voters 45 to 64 and 9% of those 65 and older. Quote, Trump symbolizes a much broader understanding than just his personality, what he represents, unquote, veteran black empowerment activist Bob Woodson told Just the News. Just the News, the website reporting this story. Quote, I think that our younger people are realizing how they have been taken for granted by the Democratic Party and Democratic philosophy, and therefore are really open to alternatives, unquote. And if you're talking alternatives, you're talking Donald Trump. So that's that story. I just wanted to share that. Now we get on to the Palestinians. Now, before I start talking about the Palestinians, I have to note that I am talking about two groups, or seem to be two groups of Palestinians. There are the Palestinians who hate Israel, will never change, and that is especially the Palestinian Authority government. And then there are those Palestinians who have changed their opinions or who are changing their opinions about Israel. So I want to start with that second group first. Palestinians prefer living under Netanyahu over Abbas, report says. There may be a huge gap between the opinions of Palestinian Authority, PA officials, and PA residents concerning Israel's sovereignty plans, Channel 13's Arab Affairs commentator Tzvi Yehetzkeli reported on Tuesday. The sovereignty plan, in case you're not familiar with it, that is Israel's intention, shooting for July 1st, I don't know if they'll hold to that date, but to assert sovereignty over a portion, about 30% of Judea and Samaria, also known as the West Bank. This is per the Trump, quote-unquote, deal of the century, his peace plan. Getting back to the quotes, Yehetzkeli interviewed several Arab residents of Judea and Samaria about their opinions on Israel applying sovereignty over portions of the territories. Some were interviewed openly, while other interviews were documented with hidden camera glasses. And pay attention to this. Quote, it is 1,000,000 times better for Israel to be responsible for the entire territory. We are ready to live under Israel's military boots rather than under the head of Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas. He has another name, Abu Mazen, unquote, one person said. Well, just a second here to correct one wrong impression that this person in this quote has. Judea and Samaria right now, the part that Israel controls, that is under military rule of Israel right now. If Israel, or when Israel asserts sovereignty, that area will be under Israel civilian rule. So Palestinians living under Israeli civilian rule will have the same rights, the same freedoms that Arabs have in Israel proper, or the existing part of Israel right now. Unlike under the Palestinian Authority, they can't just be picked up off the street, thrown into prisons for saying something bad about Mahmoud Abbas and being tortured, or journalists being jailed. All that goes by the wayside, and the Palestinians under Israeli civilian rule will have all the freedoms and rights that Arab Israelis have. I just wanted to correct that, going on with the quotes. Quote, "What has the PA done for us?" unquote, one businessman asked. Quote, "I don't want a state, I want money. Money is preferable to a state. The entire Palestinian people wants this. What does it want? It doesn't want the PA. The PA robbed us and destroyed us." When asked why Palestinians always say they want a state, resistance, and intifada, which is just the Arab word for resistance or rebellion, the businessman replied, quote, "Our government is looking for it. We want money," unquote. This is a distinction that I just made a second ago between the Palestinian Authority government and the Palestinian people, except for, of course, there are a lot of exceptions, people who hate Israel. But how big is that exception? I'm going to get to that in a second, but just finish up on the quotes here. Yehitzkeli asked another man who would win if an election was held in PA-controlled areas between Abbas and Bibi Netanyahu. Quote, "Bibi," unquote. The man responded without hesitation. Quote, and this is what I just said a moment ago, quote, "In Israel, there's law and order. Life is good," unquote, said a PA policeman, adding that in the PA, quote, "all the money goes to Abu Mazen, to the PA, to those leaders," unquote. Quote, "I prefer Israeli sovereignty 100%, unquote," he said. Which reminds me, I just want to throw this in here for a second, reminds me of an earlier quote that I had featured in earlier vlogs from an Israeli journalist, Khalid Abu Toameh. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The point is, though, that he is an Israeli Arab. He was once asked, "How does it feel to be a second-class citizen in Israel?" And his reply was, "I am not a second-class citizen in Israel. But if I were a second-class citizen in Israel, I would rather be a second-class citizen in Jerusalem than a first-class citizen in Damascus, Amman, Cairo, any Arab capital." Which now brings us to, and now back to what I was just talking about, the number of Palestinians who feel the way the ones I just quoted feel, that they may be a much larger percentage of the Palestinian population than you would imagine from reading news reports, especially our biased media in the United States, the liberal media, because here's the headline: Palestinian leadership struggling to rally public against Israeli annexation. On Monday, at the height of the blitz of interviews, Palestinian factions organized a demonstration in Manara Square, or Manara Square, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, so just bear with me, in Ramallah against Israel's plans to annex territories of the West Bank. And if you want to know what those interviews were about, I always link to the articles I quote in the description. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah Party and the Palestinian Security Forces had been asked to recruit people to attend the demonstration. But even these two powerful organizations were unable to whip up public enthusiasm to turn out. Barely 200 people showed up at the square. The sparse crowd in Manara Square and the press coverage of the speeches provided a clear indication of what the Palestinian leadership leadership now faces. The crisis of confidence between the leadership and the public has deepened so much that the public can no longer back its leadership. The masses will not take to the streets over annexation, but would over the economic crisis caused by the Palestinian Authority, their refusal to negotiate with Israel, refusal to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. And this is what I'm talking about. Headline: Palestinians refuse airborne virus aid from UAE, United Arab Emirates. The Palestinian Authority refused Wednesday a plane load of medical supplies from the United Arab Emirates to help fight coronavirus since it was coordinated with Israel rather than with them. The Etihad Airways flight, which landed in Israel on Tuesday, was the second airborne delivery of humanitarian cargo by the UAE that the Palestinians say they have turned down in a month. Pay attention to this now. Quote, "We refused to receive it because it was coordinated directly between Israel and them, the UAE," unquote, Palestinian Civil Affairs Minister Hussein al-Sheikh told AFP. That's Agency French Press. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong too. It's probably Agency Française Press, something like that. But bear with me again. The point is that 2 plane loads of aid that would benefit the Palestinian people has been refused by the Palestinian Authority because the aid was delivered to Israel and coordinated with Israel, probably for very good reason, because if they sent it directly to the Palestinian Authority, who's to say that they wouldn't just steal it or sell it or do something with it? So the smart thing to do, the United Arab Emirates, they sent the plane to Israel. And that's how Gaza and the PA have been getting aid anyhow. A lot of it, if it comes by ship, it lands at a port in Ashdod in Israel and then is transferred by truck to the Palestinians. But the point is that because the Palestinians feel insulted, because they refuse any interaction with Israel, to the point that they punish people who do interact with Israel, who even have a cup of coffee with them. There have been instances of the Israelis inviting Palestinians to dine with them for Eid al-Fitr or Eid. It's the end of the Ramadan daily fast. And these Palestinians who even talk to Israelis, they have been condemned by the Palestinian Authority government and unfortunately a number of Palestinians. But as I just said, it looks like that number is getting smaller and smaller. The Palestinians I quoted earlier are starting to get it. They get it that the Palestinian Authority, their hatred of Israel is so much, unless they get sick. If one of them gets sick, where do they go? They go to an Israeli hospital, but they will not allow the average Palestinian to get treated in an Israeli hospital. So, put that in your hookah and smoke that. And now, you know what? I have a major point to make, but this vlog has already been so long. I think I'm going to break the vlog up again into a third part. I want to talk, well, I'll give you the main point tomorrow. For today, that's plenty to think about, what I've already given you. So just consider that. I'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, I wouldn't mind if you could give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Share it with anybody you think would also like the video. If you have any comments, you can put the comments in the comment section below the video. Ask questions, suggest future topics. I love getting subscribers, so if you could subscribe, that would really be fantastic. But most of all and finally, come back and see me again. I look forward to seeing you all again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.